Okay, I've been trying to record and edit this video for a while now, but haven't really been fully satisfied with how it was turning out, so I'm re-recording and hopefully this is the final version. But yeah, this is just gonna be a video of me kind of complaining and reviewing a game called ICHU Chibi Edition. This is a Nintendo Switch game that came out last month in English Western countries. And it was a game that I was very excited about. I was following it uh, since it got announced in March of this year. And then over the year, I started hearing some stuff that was kind of making me worry a little, but I was still trying to be hopeful. And then I got the game, and it kind of turned out a bit worse than I expected. This game has some glitches, it's got some localization issues. I forgot to mention that as of the time of me recording this, there has been at least one patch that got released to fix some issues. So I do appreciate that. I'll talk more about the patch a little later in the video. But yeah, I hope that more patches come out too. And the big thing is the cut content, but that's a little bit complicated because we were told about some cut content, but I will argue that we were not told about all of the cut content, so I think that is miscommunication on the part of the localizers. They might disagree with that, but that's what I feel. A little background info. So ICHU was a mobile gacha game created by Liber Entertainment, and it released around summer of 2015. It is a rhythm game featuring a big cast of pretty boys who are training to become idols. You are a producer slash teacher at this like idol school.
プロデューサー、俺を本物のアイドルにしてくれ。愛してる言葉だけじゃ伝わらないよ。戦うんだ僕はヒーロー始まった。このストーリー君を守るために僕はステージに立って君に愛を歌う。全ての孤独という敵と戦うよ。俺はトップアイドルを目指す。恋愛リズムアドベンチャー ICHU 2015年夏リリース予定。
So ICHU was not as big as something like Ensemble Stars, okay? It was pretty niche, all things considered. But it did last a good like 4 years, which I think was pretty impressive, given its dwindling popularity over time. The game officially shut down in 2019, but Liber Entertainment did give us an offline version so we could keep our accounts. So for example, I still have my old original account over on my iPad. I'll be trying to record some footage and putting it here in this video. They did try to do a reboot game and an anime alongside it, and the reboot ended up failing due to a number of reasons. Then in 2021, Liber Entertainment announced they were going to do a Switch port of the original mobile game. They were working with developer team Opera House, and that port came out in November of 2022. So that was pretty cool. I almost bought the Japanese version, but I ended up not doing that because I was kind of a cheapskate. But I never expected like an English release or anything, especially with like how the reboot game failed, and then Liber Entertainment also has a super popular title called A3, and that game was localized in English for a little while, but ended up shutting down. So that also made me think like, okay, ICHU is never gonna be localized officially. But then But then this year, March 2024, I see a tweet from the UK publishing company PCube, and they announced that they're localizing ICHU. So in the announcement trailer, they called it ICHU Chibi Edition. We didn't know why it was called Chibi Edition. They didn't really mention that in any of like the early promo stuff. But me and a lot of other like longtime ICHU fans were super excited. We basically like came out of the woodworks and started like, oh my god, it's happening. Oh my god.
Oh my god! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
So I followed PCube. I followed their Twitters. I subscribed to their newsletter, email thingy. And then when I found the game on Amazon to pre-order, I made sure to pre-order. I did notice that on Amazon, the game physically costed about 40 US dollars. So to contrast that, in Japan, the physical edition is 8,880, I believe. So it's roughly 60 US dollars, which is like the full price of a Switch game. So that price difference was definitely kind of odd. People were like, wondering what was up with that. And so months passed. We don't get like full explanation of stuff. We get a couple of promo tweets. And then in September, I get an email from PCube. It's an announcement of the release date. So the game is coming out October 3 or October 4, depending on like your time zone. And so I'm reading the letter and I noticed that it says that the game will not have any romantic side stories. Now, what is this referring to? So ICHU in Japan advertised itself as a love rhythm adventure. The game has a main story. It had events, and most of those events had their own little mini stories. And then the cards that you collect in the game, they all have card stories. And so these card stories were otome and romantic in nature. Basically, you grab the cards of the boy you like in the game, and you would read little scenarios between that boy and you, the player. I will say here that in ICHU, the cast of guys is about, I think it was like 41 guys by the time the game shut down. Out of that cast, I think it was 12 who were teenagers under 18. So yeah, all of these guys had cards. They all had romantic stories. With the player character, you play a young woman who is 25 years old. And like I said, she is a producer for the guys. As a player character, she's interesting because in the main story, she does have an established identity and backstory that's important for plot reasons. But her personality also has to be simple enough so that us, the players, can self-insert into her. So there's times where she doesn't really get to do a lot. I feel like from the card stories I've read, like fan translations for, there's times that she can be kind of bland or kind of out of character, I would say. I mean, honestly, I don't think the producer from the main story would ever consider dating a lot of these guys. Only like a few of the older guys I can kind of see because of like shared backstory and stuff, but that's just me kind of rambling. So it's kind of up to you whether you think the card stories with the teenage boys, is it like really weird that they like the player character, or is it more of like a self-insert thing where, you know, they like you, the player? And it's kind of up to you whether you're like fine with it or you just like don't read those particular stories, or, you know, if you decide, well, fiction doesn't affect reality, I'll just enjoy this for what it is, whatever. That's kind of how I take it. I just read what I like. Well, I used to read what I like from the fan translations. Now all the card stories are cut from this official localization. So I guess the point is kind of moot, But I bring it up because it could be a reason why the romance got cut out. We'll never know for sure. Another reason could just be that because it's 4 years worth of card stories, that is a lot of text, so it was decided to just cut it out. We don't know if this was a decision by P-Cube or if this was, Liber Entertainment. I do know that when Liber Entertainment made the reboot game, they cut out most of the romance in the reboot game in an effort to kind of appeal to a wider demographic. That did not work out. So, yeah, this is just kind of me speculating a little bit. Whatever the case, the card stories were cut out from the English localization, which, I mean, even if I wasn't going to read all of them, it still kind of sucks that we lost all this content, I guess. So that definitely explains the price difference. And I did see some people being pretty confused and kind of disappointed that we were getting, content cut out. As for me, I kind of just told myself, well, at least the game is cheaper. Well, there's still other content to enjoy. There is a main story. There are 4 years worth of events to play, and many of those events will have stories. These stories were not romantic. They were about the guys usually hanging out, forming friendships with each other. Sometimes there would be a bit of backstory for the guys. There were also home screen lines. So when you set cards into a team for your favorites, they will appear on the home screen one by one and you can flick through them. The boys would have monthly lines and they would also have special birthday lines when it's like a character's birthday or when it's your birthday because you would set it in the game. There were also these phone calls where other characters would phone call and ask a question and then the guy on the home screen would answer back. So that's all, pretty fun, still pretty enjoyable. And for $40, that's still decent amount of content. That's what I figured. But there's still room for doubt, right? They might be cutting more content and we're not fully understanding the email, or maybe they mean by romance they mean something else. So I wanted some extra confirmation about what was going to be cut and what was going to stay in the English release. So what I end up doing is I DM PCube Asia, because that's the Twitter in charge of their Asian titles, so visual novels and stuff. And I ask about event stories, and I get told that we will be able to enjoy some event stories. So I'm pretty satisfied with that answer at the time. That was probably a big mistake on my part. But I figure, there's less than a month left. I'll just wait and see how the game is. And so I wait. And then October 3 comes and my Amazon order has not processed yet. It had not shipped yet. But I start seeing people talk about the game. I see comments on Twitter. I see some comments on Discord. I still talk to some longtime fans a little bit, and I also start seeing a few new faces. Some people who, just picked up the game because, there's pretty boys on it and it's a rhythm game, so they were interested in it. And there were more issues besides just the cut content. So like I said at the start, there are some glitches and some localization issues. When you start the game, there is a tutorial chapter. And for some reason, P-Cube decided that that chapter, that introduction to the game, was going to be machine translated. Yeah, I don't know why they decided that, because that leaves a bad first impression. There were some new people who said that they got worried that the rest of the game was going to have crappy translation just because of that tutorial. But luckily, they pressed on through and they started reading the story. And it looks like the main story, has some pretty good translations. In the patch notes, one of the things that got patched was some kind of thing in the main story. I don't know exactly. I haven't gone too far in the main story. Because what I ended up doing was I canceled my Amazon order for a physical copy and I just got a I went and bought from the eShop instead because that's $10 cheaper and I started playing the game a bit. And so you have bad tutorial chapter, the general instructions and stuff in the game, some of it's kind of hard to understand. There's some other minor issues like the titles are kind of centered weird for certain things. There's when you do the gotcha, when you pull the highest rarity card, which are LE cards, for some reason the image that shows up on your screen is like all pixelated and stuff. That should have been fixed by now. I'm gonna check my Switch and see if that was fully fixed because it was also in the patch notes. There's more glitches too. One annoying glitch is that there are special gotcha boxes for birthday cards, and they're sectioned off by months. But for some reason, only January is available. You can't scroll to see the other months, no matter like what button you press. That has not been fixed. Last I checked, it was not in the patch notes, and that seems like a pretty annoying issue, so I hope they fix that. And then as for the cut content, so there were no card stories, like we all figured. Okay, so as I was going through the game, getting screenshots and video footage, I did find in the help menus some of the instructions that they translated are saying wrong info. So there's like pages that'll say that there is a love story between the guys and you, the player. There are other instructions that are incorrect, so I just wanted to point that out. There were no event stories as far as we can tell. The content for this game is sectioned off where you have to read the main story and play certain songs to keep unlocking stuff. So you have to like keep advancing in the main story in order to unlock more and more events. So I haven't done too much, but I will say that one of the earliest events, the Kanata event, should have a story, but it does not in this game. And when I've talked to other people who are farther along in the game, they have not found any event stories. Usually in the story tab, you were supposed to have 3 sections for the main story, the event stories, and the card stories, but in Chibi Edition, you only have the main story. Oh yeah, they also cut out all the home screen lines, which sucks.
「でってメッセージを送るときにね、バベルのと送る」
ちびデビくんシリーズのスタンプ、すっごく可愛い悪魔なんだよ。
お昼ご飯アンパンじゃダメ？何食べよう。
晩ほどとは言わぬが、貴様もしっかり昼食をとるのだぞ。
And it's really weird because when you start the game, you get a page that says, enter your birthday, and then, the characters will say happy birthday to you or something like that. And that's just a straight up lie because that was a feature in the game before, but it's just cut out from the English release altogether. So yeah, it was just kind of frustrating and disappointing, the glitchiness and the few localization issues. I am glad that like most of the main story seems to be a good translation. I haven't gone farther ahead, so there might be like some moments that are messed up. If you played the game and you're farther ahead in me, if you're like in the part 2, part 3 of main story, you can let me know in the comments if you found any like big issues in like the localization or anything. So yeah, I've just kind of been talking to other fans and like newcomers about how we've kind of been disappointed in this localization and stuff because it's still a fun game at its core, you know? But it's kind of just a letdown that this is like kind of what happened. And I did ask a second time on Twitter about the event stories, and I got reassured again that if you progress in the game, you unlock event stories, but no one has found them. So that might just be a misunderstanding from the person on Twitter. So I can't fault them too much. So someone that I talked to who is a newcomer to ICHU, they sent screenshots of PCube's Discord. So I didn't even know PCube had a Discord, but I guess they do. And there were some comments from people asking about ICHU and the glitches and stuff. And someone from PCube staff responded to them, and they were just kind of rude, I think. Okay, so I'm just gonna read out loud the conversations that were happening in the PCube Discord. These screenshots feature 4 people. One of them is a PCube staff. One of them is the person who gave me the screenshots. So the conversation starts with one person. I'll just say person A. They're saying, I found a review for ICHU Chibi Edition on Amazon. As if hearing about the crappy image quality for cards and other things wasn't enough, I hear voice lines and certain events are also missing, and you use machines to translate the text to English. Is this true? Then the PCube staff responds with, obviously not. Can we take it down a notch with the accusatory tone? We announced specifically what was missing. Nothing was actually missing except an incorrect assumption that everything that was in the mobile game would make it to the Switch release, and we were clear what that was. And then another person, person B, responds, I haven't played the game, but from what I've heard from friends, the Japanese Switch release did include all the things that your version did not. I know you announced it as a Chibi edition since the beginning, but I don't think you were clear enough in what that meant and what content wasn't included, since most fans didn't find out until the release. That's not how it should be, in my opinion. Moreover, I've also heard about the localization being lackluster and things like the low image quality on cards, while they look okay on the JP version, or being unable to access the birthday gachas, problems that fans have been telling you about since release and getting no answer. I've been playing PCube games for a long time now, big fan of your visual novel releases, but after hearing all that about ICHU, I'm now concerned about the quality of future releases. It would do well if you were more transparent with this kind of things and listened to fans. They trusted you and bought a game only to find out it was a very lazy release, incomplete and with bugs that you haven't addressed. And a little sad face. The same PCube staff member replies, besides the multiple social posts that I won't bother linking to here, we were clear about it from the announcement of the game, which was well before release. ICHU Chibi Edition is a Nintendo Switch remake of the original Japanese release, which follows the main storyline and rhythm action gameplay, but does not include the romantic side stories. I don't know how clear one can get. Having said that, we're preparing a patch that will release soon, and we will address some of the concerns you mentioned, the contents of which will be announced on our social media. Happy to answer any questions you have without being accused of laziness or other unnecessary terms like that. Finally, in relation to your comment about the Japanese release, content available in one region does not always mean it can be available to other regions as well, for a number of reasons. For ICHU specifically, I'm sure you would have seen that the Asia version will be the same as the Chibi edition. Have you voiced the same concerns to the publisher of that version? Person B replies, hey, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this in a bad way. I'm glad to hear that patch is in the works. What I'm just saying is that if most fans of the game were not expecting the release to be like this, maybe for next time you should be even clearer about the content, even if you think you already were, because the truth is that it didn't get through to the intended audience. Nothing wrong with admitting that. I don't care about the Asia version. I was just concerned about how this release was handled after months of seeing friends trying to get an answer from PCube. Thank you for taking your time to answer. Looking forward to Bust the Fellows 2 and Hanakare. The P-Cube staff replies, "We always strive to communicate things like these well in advance so people can make an informed decision. I'm not saying we did perfectly, but we did communicate the differences in advance. Feedback is of course welcome about every release, and since you mentioned Hanakare, sometimes it works the other way too, as in the English translation of the PQ release won't be exactly the same as the one in the Japanese version, a fact that some people were not happy about, but we have made sure to communicate that for anyone who wishes to purchase the Japanese version now. And thank you for your support, goes without saying." And then there's person C, who did buy ICHU. "I pre-purchased ICHU and never received any email on the changes. I informed myself actively about the absence of the romance side stories. I decided to go on with the purchase with hardly any time to think on it since the news came days before the purchase went through. I was okay with that. The surprise came when, aside from the issues already mentioned, there were no event side stories at all. I know you said you will announce the patch contents, but can we expect something in that area? I believe even a DLC would be welcome. I'm aware the game was cheaper than the Japanese version." The P-Cube staff replies, "Are you subscribed to our newsletter and or follow us on social media? We communicated the absence of the side stories and there are currently no plans to add them. If that changes, we will make sure to communicate it. When we release the patch, there will be notes as to what has changed." Okay, so there's a lot I can say about all this. First, please point to me where the social media posts are where you guys are specifying that this game will not have card stories, event stories, and home screen lines. Because I can't find any post on y'all's Twitter/X. And I followed you guys from the moment y'all announced the game and I turned on notifications. I never saw any posts that mention it. I did get the email. I'll admit to that. I already showed it earlier. But the email only says romantic side stories, and I think I have made it clear why that is confusing language. You guys seem to think that saying romantic side stories was enough to cover everything that was cut, but myself and many other players do not agree with that. Second, you guys don't want to be called lazy for the work y'all did, but what am I supposed to call that half-assed tutorial and those help menus, which many still say wrong info? Many help menus and tutorial screens still say that, you know, there's events, there are phone calls, voice lines, the boys will say happy birthday to you. That's all still in the game. So not fixing those menus and having that crappy tutorial chapter, I would call all of that lazy. And I haven't even mentioned how when you're doing the gacha, when you pull the cards, they all have like titles. And I've seen some of them have like weird grammar that it looks machine translated. So yeah, I would say that was all lazy. And you guys mentioned an Asian localization. I don't know the full details of that. I think I did see a tweet mentioning that there was a Chinese localization. I don't know which company is working on that. If I find out, I wouldn't mind also complaining to them about the stuff that got cut out. But I think that's more for the fans who actually speak that language. They're probably complaining just as much as us English players are complaining. And I understand that there can be differences between releases, that I don't know the full details of like how y'all made like a deal to localize the game or anything. I don't know. Like I said earlier, maybe the cut content was the decision of Liber Entertainment. I mean, I'm disappointed, but like, okay, that's their decision. But I still think people screwed up in announcing this game and giving us the information. They did not give us accurate information. There are glitches which you guys are fixing, which I appreciate. bet there's still other glitches that haven't been addressed. And yeah, overall, I'm just tired and disappointed that this is what happened to a game that I really love. I've loved for years. This series has been going on for 9 years now. I remember when the reboot game failed, Liver Entertainment posted a message to their fans. It was all in Japanese, but it got fan translated. And Liver talked about how they still wanted to finish the story of ICHU, and they wanted to at least keep celebrating ICHU up until a 10th anniversary. And I thought that was cool. I thought that was nice of them. But now this localization exists and it's just like a stain in my memory of this series, and I'm annoyed and sad. And I guess that's all I've got to say on the subject for now. Thanks for doing patches. I hope you guys keep doing more patches. And I guess I'll be signing off. If you watched this, have you played ICHU before? Whether it was a mobile game, did you pick up the Switch game? Tell me who your best boy is. My best boy is Eva, and I really love Rebezerk as a unit, and I love Rebezerk plus Babbitt and Chris as a little found family. I love them a whole lot. And that's all I've got to say, so bye for now.